Hey guys, it's Mitch. How's it going? Yes, it's me and my face. It's not even Halloween anymore, and yet we are subjected still. I know, nobody asked for this. So today we're doing a special presentation kind of thing. This is a little bit of a celebration because I just hit 2,000 subs. And just recently was the 2-year anniversary of the channel as well. So everything's coming up Blood Force. So I struggled a little bit for what to do exactly for this kind of thing. I thought maybe like a special revisit, but all my stuff is kind of planned. So it's like, okay, what do I have set aside that's too good for a regular revisit that I just haven't hit, and there's like nothing there. All the good stuff is scheduled. I can move something up, but it's just going to be another revisit. I thought about maybe doing like a top 5 of some kind, or a top 10, because I have done those once or twice, but they also take a shit ton of editing, and I'm getting a bit close to the number, so I got to come up with something quick. So this is the quick and dirty revisit of Blood Force #1. So this is 2.5 years after I started doing the comic. I'm not sure, it probably took me a little bit more than 6 months to finish the first issue, since at the beginning at least, I was still taking like a week or 2, maybe, sometimes 3 to finish a page, because I was just kind of noodling. I wasn't doing live streams. I wasn't uploading any videos. The first, 10 pages of the comic I drew, I didn't record anything for, because it just hadn't occurred to me yet. So the plan today is to take a look back, having been steadily drawing for 2 years now, 2.5 years, and see basically what kind of stuff I can pick out, what kind of stuff I might change, what kind of stuff I think I did fairly well, and try to give you a little bit of context for where I was at the time, because I don't think I've done that before with Blood Force, maybe a little bit on the Patreon. I know the first few pages in particular, like that first issue, I would write like long descriptions about what was going through my head when I was drawing it or writing it or whatever. I should probably review those before I do this. And I can't take a look at a physical copy because those don't exist just yet. Hopefully 2025 is the year that happens, but I'm just going to basically go through the PDF, flip through the pages one by one, go panel 1, 2, 3, 4, and we'll try to keep up that way. The only other way to do it would be to flip through the actual physical pages, the boards, but those they don't have any dialogue on them anymore, or most of them don't. Some of them have dialogue written directly on them, because it took me a while to figure out what the fuck I was even doing with the lettering. But I want to give you at least an idea of what the final presentation would look like and review that. I think I'm going with the hand-lettered version at this time, because I don't think the digital lettering version is actually complete. I thought it was. So that still has yet to be done. All sorts of lettering to be completed. So without further ado, I should do this in one take if I can. If you enjoy the channel, if you feel like you might want to help out a little bit, go subscribe to my Patreon. Links are in the description, gives you early access to everything I do, from the Blood Force stuff to the YouTube videos before they get uploaded to YouTube. I'm doing the long version, as well as some Patreon exclusive content. You can also follow me on Instagram and DM me there for commissions, and you can join me on the Blood Force Discord server. Yeah, like I'm combining 2 of them now. You put me on the spot, I'm going to fuck it up every time. All right, let's do the comic. Okay, so welcome back, everybody, to the halcyon days of Blood Force #1. It has been a while. It's been a while since I've looked at these for the most part. So we're going to start things off here. Well, we won't quite start with this. This is the original shot at the cover to Blood Force #1. We'll come back to this. So, why don't we start with a little bit of backstory, because I like to do that with these, and this is one I actually know off by heart. Imagine that. So, Blood Force started with discussions that my brother and I would have over just like text, where we do long back and forth discussions, and often the image guys would come up, and I just kind of ridicule them for a bit for what I looked at as the dumb stuff they were doing in their drawings. This would include all of them except Mark. It's kind of rare to find something to criticize Mark about. So we were talking about the image guys, and we were banding around like, hey, if you came up with a stupid image comic, how would that go? And I think it was a very short part of the conversation that we moved on. Or we moved on in the conversation. I didn't move on. I was still thinking of that shit afterwards. And the next day, I just started, on my way to work, coming up with stupid names. Okay, so what can we come up with that would be close to an image style name, but a little bit dumber? And the first one I came up with was Lieutenant Hawkstab. Although I think at that point he was either special agent or general or something like that. And then I decided to demote him a little bit. He deserved it. Also came up with Fireburn and Popo in that first group, and a couple of names that I probably won't end up using at any point. Shortly after that came up with Hard. My brother came up with the name Shockblock. He didn't even mean to come up with a character name. He was just like, saying something random. And I'm like, I'm stealing that. Thank you. And then Maxtremus and General Rancor. And we were good to go. So I tried to come up with a scenario for it. Came up with one which was okay, but it was a bit too, I don't know, like esoteric. It was the kind of thing I would have come up with in high school. And it was tough to think of a way to continue the comic past the initial concept. So from there, I just decided to go with a more generic thing where it was like, well, what do we do? Just do it where, because I knew Maxtremus was an alien. So it's like, okay, well, she's leader of a refugee race. And she's being chased across the stars by evil aliens. They're trying to enslave them. And they've come to Earth for sanctuary. And the team has been assigned to her as some sort of combination of security and strike force. And it's like, sure, I could kind of see working with that. The most important thing was I could see spinning off ideas from that. Like, all sorts of shit fits into that. That's absolutely fine. So from there, I decided to try my hand at an image style again. So I had a fun concept and I had a bunch of dumb character names. And I was like, okay, why don't I actually try drawing in an image style again? Because I hadn't tried doing that since I was like learning how to draw comics when I was like 12 or 13. So this was the result of that first effort. This is my first drawing of a Blood Force member, and it's Hard. And the costume is pretty much intact from when I first designed it. I was going directly off of some Liefeld references, particularly you see the Prophet shoulder pads there, which I often will use as reference. I'm starting to work away from that now. I'm also starting to work away from even having the shoulder pads in the first place because they're a pain in the ass and you can't see his gigantic shoulders. You can also see he's not nearly as big as he would be later on. That would be fixed. But I think a good first effort. Didn't know what I was doing with the neck stretches yet. Just knew they had to be there. That is some hollow shit going on around his clavicles. From there, designed the next guy, which was Lieutenant Hawkstab. And I decided to go with more of a Jim Lee look with this one. Thought I'd try for more of a, like a dramatically shaded version here. And again, like mostly intact. You can see a couple of things that have maybe changed, like the blades are much longer than they used to be, for one thing. He's got those pips on his shoulder there, which I got rid of as soon as I could because they're kind of a bitch to fit in there, and I would tend to forget them from panel to panel. Also, his hair is not nearly out of control enough. This is a much more trying to make trying to make a good drawing of a superhero character. Still working on musculature a little bit. I've got a little bit of Stephen Platt syndrome going on, as you can see, where I drew in the shape of the upper body and then drew in the muscles inside of it. But yeah, another good effort. So next thing I drew was the fake cover to Blood Force #1. So I'd only designed Hawkstab and Hard there. I hadn't designed any of the other guys. I figured, fuck it. I'll just do the cover for the book and design them on the fly. And the designs haven't changed too much from what I've got here for the most part. Obviously, gets its influence off of Youngblood #1. That was intentional. Hawkstab looks pretty good. Shockblock, I really enjoyed how that turned out. Particularly that lightning. That lightning still looks good. Popo, as you can see, wasn't sure what I was doing with Popo just yet. I just knew he was going to be my Punisher/Wolverine kind of character. Basically looks a little bit like Solid Snake. Didn't think about putting a lot of black in him just yet. Didn't think about dramatically shading him differently than the rest of the team, which was something I think I came up with halfway through the book. And actually, you can see there's not a lot of black in the cover at all. That's something I've kind of slowly realized over the course of the comic. Fireburn there, basically unchanged. Maxtremus is the most different because, completely different costume for one thing, where she's got like a whole kind of breastplate kind of thing going on. So yeah, drew that, decided I was being a little bit of a wuss about drawing my scantily clad female characters. So it's like, okay, just, go look up like bathing suits and give her one of those. And that's pretty much what I did. It's a good first effort, but where we went from here was the actual cover to Blood Force #1. And this was done after I finished the first issue, which was smart. For one thing, I had a clear idea of what my characters looked like. Also, I'd worked out a whole bunch of kinks by the time I got to the end of the book, where I'd figured out some angles. I'd figured out a couple of things about drawing the guys themselves. And I'd been doing a few revisits, actually, by the time I did this cover. So I was starting to pick up a couple of things about, composition, that kind of thing. You can see this is a triangular composition. And actually, it's a kind of a nice one, I think. I believe this was the first live stream I did. It took me 5.5 hours, I think. We did it all in one go and was like a twitchy mess by the end of it, but a lot of it still holds up pretty well. Popo in the front here, yeah, his pose isn't as good as I would hope for. The rest of it, yeah, not too bad at all. Now, Maxtremus is like, okay. The funniest thing with Maxtremus was I'd drawn all the guys, or like penciled them out, and I'm like, I want to get Maxtremus in here somewhere, but I don't really know where to fit her. I'd like to have her as like this, overarching presence. Kind of like, what's his name? In Thundercats, at the end of the theme song. The Jaguar guy, I don't remember his name now. But he's just kind of like overseeing the whole thing. I'd like that kind of thing. The problem is that she's going to be in the way of the logo, like too much. And then on the stream, my brother suggested, fuck it, put her in there anyway, and then cover her face with the logo. And therefore, you can just have the logo and then tits. And then the regular guys. It's like, that's perfect. It's not perfect, but it is funny. And I'd probably end up putting like, the cover and then the unfettered cover underneath or something. I'd have to figure something out. Maybe put just the logo up in the top left corner. But yeah, pretty good cover, I'd say. Stronger than the ones I've been coming up with recently anyway. For number 3 and number 4, the regular edition covers. Okay, so here we go with Blood Force number 1. We're going to start with an inciting incident. I know what those are. And we're at some monitoring station. And what we're monitoring is a meteor crashing down to Earth somewhere in Canada. And the comms guys call over their regional manager or whatever the fuck and say, "Sir, we've got a disturbance in the force. What should we do?" And he's like, "You get me General Rancor on the line. Something tells me he'll want to know about this." I don't know why he's talking like Popo, but it's fun to talk like Popo. Some decent stuff to open up with, actually. I was drawing this with the idea of it being a color book, which I've kind of thrown away recently. I just like rendering too much. But, decent tree line at the bottom of panel 2 here. I guess it's panel 2. With the thing streaking across the sky. Close-up of the guy's face with the helmet on in panel 1, what I'm considering panel 1. My script said he was wearing ridiculous headgear because that's what Jim Lee characters always do in a command center. So I decided to put the Weapon X thing on top of his head. It doesn't look like it quite fits him there, but that's okay. Panel 3 is fine. I'm really using the templates I got, which were probably pretty new at that point. Panel 4, it's not a bad impact. This is the meteor hitting the mountain here. And what the meteor is it's the Klurg scout ship. And then the close-up on the commander on the bottom panel here, which is, not a bad close-up at all, really. Went for a double lighting thing. That looks all right. Whole bunch of, Kirby tech. And just whatever I could find in the background there. It actually doesn't look too bad. All right, so page 2. So now we're cutting to Blood Bastion as General Rancor shows Lady Maxtremus around the place and tells her just how great this place is, that, we're glad you decided to stay with us and chose us to be your special forces / security team. And he's doing just, bragging and stuff. And all the stuff going on, panel 1, the building there, that's WWE headquarters in Connecticut, which I just thought was a little funny. But it didn't really occur to me that, what might be a better idea is if you design some sci-fi kind of tower thing. And so that's where they're gonna move to eventually anyway. Panel 2 is fine with the overhead shot of the 3 of them walking down the hall, but that's kind of bearing the lead. The big shot here, of course, is the top to bottom shot of Maxtremus with General Rancor. This is basically my first time drawing the character. This took a while to complete because apart from the figures, there's not a whole lot of fun stuff in here. I'm doing a lot of fake backgrounds behind them, which I would get a little better at. And I was still dicking around at this time, not on a schedule. I'll finish it eventually. I can take my time a little bit. So this page sat on my desk for 2-3 weeks. And just I should just finish that just so I can get it off my goddamn board. Okay, drawing of Maxtremus. She would change a bit though. For one thing, she's kind of mostly properly proportioned at this point. Her head looks a little large. And her hair looks a little flat because I still wanted it to be actual hair at this time, not so much a graphic, which is kind of what it turned into. Also, boobs got a lot bigger. That's important. General Rancor is designed purely off of Nick Fury, like the Jim Steranko Nick Fury, with all of his many straps. And I like the way you could work the shadow into the costume. That looked all right. As a page design overall, I think this is actually pretty good. Some of the finish isn't 100% there, but it's pretty close. All right, page 3 here. This is a little bit weaker, but we don't have a giant anchor image to work with, which is I think I was aware of, and I tried to make the close-up on General Rancor here a bit more, like popping him out of the panel a bit, so try to make it a bit more of a focus. But Rancor is going to take Max Tremas around and, just show her the place, and he's going to show her her brand new Strike Force. Aren't you lucky? Gift for you. Yeah, some of these drawings aren't as good as I would like them to be. Even that head of Rancor down in the corner there, it's trying a little bit too hard to be like a good comic. It's not trying to be like an Image comic, not yet. So we had to start out by, kind of moving away from my attempts at drawing realistic comics towards a more imagey style, try to draw as imagey as possible, and now we're kind of moving away from that again to whatever the fuck I'm doing these days, which is, I guess, whatever my actual style is now. But yeah, this was not a particularly fun page, but I think I did do it in sequence at least. On to the next one. This is page 4 and 5. I'm going to try and put these together. So this is my first attempt at a 2-page spread where we get introduced to our characters. We're going to start out with Hard here. That was a pretty big drawing of Hard and getting closer to the kind of mass that I wanted for him. And he's doing a training sequence with Fireburn. And, not a bad shot of Fireburn. Yeah, I don't think there's anything really too far off there. I like the fire trail. I like pretty much everything going on in here. I didn't like drawing the backgrounds. There's not even a lot of backgrounds. And I'm still like, oh my God, there's so much space to fill. It's like, not really. That was kind of a big hiccup I had to get around. I think this is maybe one of the first pages I scripted. And I really enjoyed the exchange between Hard and Fireburn here. This was before Hard really had all of the dick-related puns going on. So he was just like, a big tough guy. So he starts off with like, fancy flying, Fireburn, but I only need to connect once and you'll be grounded permanently. And it's like, well, yeah, that's yeah, of course you would. And Fireburn is like, tough talk, Hard, but the fact is you move too slow. While me, I move at the speed of fire. And I was like, okay, it almost sounds like something, but except when you think about it for a second, it's like, well, no, that's just stupid. And it's like, that's exactly what I'm looking for. So then from there, we're going to move to shots of Shockblock and Hawkstab overseeing the whole thing, which are not very good. I think I thought so at the time, but I did just kind of want to finish up these pages. I was happy with the way the spread part worked, and then this stuff was turning into a bit of a grind, so I just wanted to move on, which honestly I don't think is the wrong impulse. I think if I had to redo this again, I'd shadow Hawkstab. I mean, in addition to just like doing better construction on them, I'd shadow them a lot heavier. And, some more fun, dumb dialogue, while Shockblock's, he's not really, getting histrionic or anything about what's going on down there. He's just kind of watching Fireburn fly around Hard, and he's like, he's going to just splatter him if he actually catches him. And it's like, but Fireburn's very elusive. It's like, okay, for now, what happens if he's not for a second? And you get the line in, and catching Fireburn's like catching a spark. Even if you could, you'd get burned. It's like, well, what? And Shockblock's just like, oh, all right, man, I'm not in command. You do what you like. All right, so from there we go to page 6, where Hawkstab notices that General Rancor has entered Hazard Sector. That was it, because I just took Danger Room and was like, okay, let's go through the thesaurus. So with the commanding officer on deck, they decide to do a big group pose. Even though it doesn't make any sense for them to all of a sudden be in the same room, that's okay. That's a pretty good pose. This was like the first thing I drew, I feel like, where it really felt like I was pushing things. I could, it wouldn't be that anymore. Like, we pushed things quite a bit farther than this since here. But, as like a first attempt, I think this is quite good and like very silly. Just going for extreme intensity, which is not something I was used to drawing at this time. Everything looks pretty good. Hawkstab's a little bit iffy. He looks a little bit like small for one thing, and also he's a little bit difficult to differentiate from like his leg, his right leg melds a little bit with Shockblock's left leg behind him. But yeah, overall pretty good. And I can actually give you a little bit behind the scenes because this would be the original version of that. Complete with original version of Rancor, where he was more of like a I guess politician, like more of an emp kind of character, only not a midget. So you see the big group shot here. And it's like, yeah, that's fun, but it's not as intense or silly as we could make it. Why don't we go with this? So, you can see quite a bit more focus on this one. Also, on this one, this is my first attempt really at trying to do like speed lines, like Platt style speed lines, where I just did way too many, like in way too close formation, because I thought that would look cool. And it looks fine. But like also, it took me, I think, at least an hour or two just to get those speed lines in there. And that's like half of the whole thing. And like they were going to be difficult to get close to everybody. And my hand was fucking killing me by the end of it. Also, bottom panel there, Maxtremis looks terrible. Can't have that. Still figuring out how to draw her hair. It wouldn't be until the Cyberzerk fight in issue 2 that I really had an idea of what to do with her hair. Page 7, Maxtremis gets introduced to Blood Force. Blood Force has been briefed to some extent, like very tertiary kind of briefing. But this is the first time they're actually meeting face to face. And we cut through our guys one by one, mostly one by one. Popo's not here, which General Rancor's not going to be too happy about in a minute. But we learn who our characters are, a la, I think it's Youngblood number 0, I want to say, where you just do the vertical panels and do a little bit of description. Everybody says one single line. So we find out that Hawkstab has enhanced agility, skilled in hand-to-hand combat and military tactics. He also has arm blades. Fireburn is Earth's leading pyrologist, and he owns the patents on several fire-related technologies. Whatever that means. I'm not sure exactly what fire-related technologies would be. It didn't say fire extinguishing or anything like that. He invents fire things. We learn that Shockblock gained his powers as the result of a hacking accident. Again, I'm not sure exactly what that means. Also, I'm planning on rescinding that. In Blood Force number, I don't know, 7, 8, somewhere in there, I'm thinking up a better origin for Shockblock. So I'm considering making it just that. That's just what Rancor's decided for how Shockblock got his powers. Shockblock's tried to correct him, and he just won't listen. And then we've got Hard, who is the product of an experimental physical development program engineered by our National Board of Health and Wellness Coaching, which, as far as I understand, is an actual organization that comes up with lunch plans and like workout routines for like middle schools, public schools, that kind of shit. I like the idea of that kind of program having like an illegal black book kind of project going on. So this page here, not too bad at all, really. The guys look kind of huge compared to Rancor and Maxtremis. I'm okay with that. They're meant to look huge. The faces here, again, trying a little too hard to make them look like realistic faces to some degree at least. Not shadowing them very dramatically, not over-rendering in any way. Like, these would look completely different these days. And I also have an original version of this page as well. Right here. So this is in the aftermath of the training session between Fireburn and Hard. And again, original design for General Rancor. The problem was that the 4 vertical panels showing the 4 guys, and it was going to have the descriptions of each of them, were too small. I had the panel with, like, showing the aftermath of the fight way too big in the top here. Not a bad looking panel, particularly Hard and Fireburn, actually. That's one of the better drawings of Fireburn I think I've done. So it did bug me to have to scrap this page. But this simply wasn't going to work with the amount of dialogue that was going to be on it, because I had no idea how much room I was going to need, and I wasn't really thinking at all of trying to leave any room. Looking at it now, it's Hard and Fireburn who really only look any kind of good. All the, like, Shockblock here, that arm looks pretty good. The head sure as shit doesn't. Hawkstab looks okay. Maxtremis doesn't look good. The heads are about comparable. Maxtremis at the bottom there, it looks like a little better, but that's about it. All right, page 8. This was actually one of the last pages I drew for this issue. Imagine that. Because I wasn't sure exactly what I was even going to do with it. This was going to be my giant exposition page, because this was before I'd been rereading Image Comics, really. I had a couple of them at this point, but nowhere near like what I would have inside of a few months. So all I really remembered was that every once in a while they would get really wordy out of nowhere. I think I was mostly remembering Eric Stevenson and Brandon Choi comics. So this is where we get the whole rundown on what the situation with Maxtremis is. Why she's here, why she needs a strike force, what she's trying to accomplish, all that kind of shit. And I decided, I think a little bit on the fly, to basically make the focus of the panel her boobs as a bit of an apology to the reader. As like, I'm sorry that I made you read this. Here, take this as like, your condolences. And then, yeah, she leaves. She gets reassured that we will do our best to help you in your endeavors. And actually, not a bad little borderless panel at the bottom here. I kind of like that. With the tiny shots of Shockblock and Hard and Fireburn. And Shockblock still got his coffee. That's important. The close-up on Rancor here, not great. The long shot of Maxtremus and Rancor is actually not too bad. I think I remember having a lot of difficulty making that look like anything because that drawing was so fucking tiny. Page 9. This looks kind of blotchy. This might have had some whiteout going on. But anyway, Hawkstab goes and dismisses his troops. Rancor wants a word because he expected the full team to be here. He wanted, to basically parade this team that he's assembled for Maxtremus, and he didn't have the whole team here. He's super pissed off about it now, so he's going to chew Hawkstab out senselessly. And we end with the great line, either get the job done or by God, I'll find somebody else with arm blades who can. That's another line I'm rather proud of. All the drawings here, I would say pretty good, except for Hawkstab up in the top left. It's just, like his neck is kind of skinny, and I had no idea what to do with his hair just yet. I was trying to go for Spartan kind of hair, as in the Wildcats character. Hadn't realized that his hair was basically its own character. But yeah, overall, not too bad. Got some fun stuff going on in panel 3 here with General Rancor's shoulder. Just the little patches of black here. That's some fun looking shit. I gotta draw him again soon. Panel 10, Hawkstab sheepishly walks back to Shockblock, and he's going to assign Shockblock to go and find Popo, and just kind of, shit rolls downhill, so he got shit on by General Rancor, now he's got to shit on Shockblock. It's like, you do it because I told you to, Shock. Something like that. I mostly remember this page for there being a lot of tech, and there's not that much, but it was still more than I was comfortable doing. This was not a lot of fun. Also, panel 1 here, I did give Shockblock the straight up and down Liefeld pose. Didn't give him a boob shelf. I think I maybe considered it, but he would have been like leaning out of frame a little bit. The shot of Shockblock in panel 3, quite a bit better actually. Not too bad at all. Again, though, not a ton of black in these characters. It's something I'm always struggling with, where I'll tend to shade. I might shade a lot, but I'm going to do it lightly with like rendering instead of just spotting blacks, which I really do need to work on. Oh, well, that's a transition. So now we're going to cut to Popo. As, Popo is sitting on a rooftop, searching for muggers to destroy with his gigantic cannon. Not a bad looking gun. And just thinking like loner thoughts to himself. And, not a bad introduction to the character. Get them all lit from below. The backgrounds here, they mostly work. There is no perspective. They're just kind of eyeballed. And you can really tell with the lines on the roof that he's perched on. But yeah, pretty good shot. You can see it's just not 100% there with Popo yet. And Shockblock approaches, kind of interrupting his reverie. Set him against a giant moon. Doesn't look too bad. A little bit of a cityscape in the background too. Didn't realize I did that. That also doesn't look too bad. And I remember liking this shot of Popo, lit from the back, which I thought looked a little Joe Madish. So page 12, we're going to have a bit of verbal jousting between Popo and Shockblock, which I remember being excited about going into this page, and then by the time I finished this page, I'm like, oh my god, get this fucking thing over with. So basically, Shockblock is trying to call Popo in, because they've got a mission. They're going to be doing some investigations, because Hawkstab wants Popo back at base, because Rancor wants Popo back at base. And Popo's like, after I kill a few more muggers. And Shockblock's like, I'm not waiting. And he's like, it's going to be soon. And then at that point, a mugger creeps out from between two dumpsters, like he spawns there, and turns as he hears a noise above him. And yeah, so there was some fun stuff to start on this page, top left, the shot of Popo here. It's fairly simple, but it was fun, and it was a little bit dramatically lit. I would light him more dramatically now, but still not too bad. You can see, I don't have his hair down yet. And again, wouldn't until, I think, probably the end of issue 2, when I gave him more of a brush cut. Here, he's got, it's like slicked back, or that's the idea anyway. Panel 2, it started to get a little bit tough to draw. Just the angle I chose, I think. Panel 3, fine. You know, it's just shock blocked him straight on. Again, I would like to light that differently now, but other than that, it's fine. Panel 4 was a bitch to figure out where to even draw it, like what angle to draw it from. Because I wanted Popo basically perched on the ledge, but it didn't make any kind of sense moving from how he was talking to shock block, which I could totally get around these days, I think, by just having him all of a sudden be perching on the ledge. But I couldn't wrap my head around it at that point. So I instead decided to crouch him low, like real low over the ledge, like he's being super dramatic, which I was fine with as a solution, really. And then the shot of the dumpsters down there, I hated that because using a lot of a ruler, and it took me forever to finish. And then the final panel was, again, it didn't take me too long at least, but it took me quite a while, quite a bit of penciling and erasing and penciling again to try and find a way to get like a bit of an overhead angle where he's twisting and looking up behind him. Didn't really nail it at all, but it's kind of silly looking, and I'm like okay with it, I guess. Really, I'd say the panel on this I'm least happy with probably is panel 5, which is just kind of okay. And then we go to page 13 as Popo leaps down to eliminate the mugging threat. There's some problems with this drawing, mostly around the midsection, where all the shadows kind of converge. It does look like part of his midsection is missing. Also, like, you know, I could come up with all sorts of stuff to put in underneath him here other than speed lines. You know, like try to put in a bit more detail, and I think I wanted to, but then I got it stuck in my head about doing speed lines, and then I was just going to finish that no matter what. But it's a pretty fun drawing still. I was quite happy when I finished it. I still think it kind of holds up. And I love all the bullet cases flying everywhere. And I still use this head for my profile picture on all sorts of shit, including on the Discord server. Okay, from there, page 14, where General Rancor has Blood Force seated in a high school auditorium. Specifically the high school auditorium that I went to. Or pretty close to anyway, kind of a simplified version. And General Rancor is going through the employee handbook, because this is an orientation. You know, we've got you set up with your new branch manager. These are the rules for being in Blood Force. You know, you've been able to hang out at the place for a while and kind of get familiar, but now we actually have to give you the guidelines and try to have a little bit of fun with the characters here. So Hawkstab, of course, sitting right up in the front row, very attentive. Fireburn, he's a few rows back and he's just kind of lounging, and Hard, of course, has to fit in like 3 chairs. Really, he looks like he'd be sitting on the floor, but that's okay. Then all of a sudden, an aide busts in. We get word from the first page that there's some sort of disturbance going on in the Canadian wilderness, and another branch of the government, which is called Spasm, figured that we might be interested. No idea. And Rancor says, it can't be a coincidence. And Maxtremus backs him up and says, no, General. The first world they conquered also had mountains. This can mean only one thing. The Clerg have arrived. Which, of course, is stupid. Doesn't mean anything. But it's enough of a reason to gather our team together and send them off to investigate. Again, inciting incident. And yeah, reasonably okay page. This was another one that got put off until after I'd drawn all the fun ones. And was just kind of hell to finish. Even though, like, it's not a particularly tough-looking page. Like, all those seats are a bit of a pain in the ass. That's about it. But yeah, because it was just kind of unpleasant to draw when I wanted to be drawing punching things. That's why I just draw in sequence now. You know, page 1, page 2, etc. Because, I mean, that way you usually get a pretty even distribution of exposition versus punching pages. And you can juggle them a little bit in the middle there, so long as, you know, by the time you get to the climax, you're just drawing the climax. Like, get all of the not fun pages out of the way before the end of the issue, because the end of the issue is usually where the fun stuff happens. Yeah, but for the most part, okay, nothing too special, but nothing too bad, really, I guess. I mean, Maxtremus in panel 3 there, looking pretty iffy, particularly that arm. But again, it was just kind of a case of I need to finish this panel and move the fuck on. Getting it through my head that it was okay for a page to not be as good as I wanted it to be. So long as I could get it to a place where I was okay with letting it out the door the way it looked. So, page 15 now. As Blood Force rockets off to the crash site to meet, and what they're planning on doing is they're going to link up with the Spasm team that's there, the Science Guys. And Science Guys is an acronym. All of it. And start out with A pretty fun design for a spaceship. This is the Bloodbird. Like very vaguely started off of the whatever the VTOL thing was in Wildcats that they had to get around in. They're Blackbird. And then just kept adding on more fins and pods and turbines. So yeah, it's pretty fun. It doesn't 100% work in 3D space, I don't think, which would be a problem in Blood Force number 2 when I had to draw it in the light. But when it was blacked in like this, not too bad at all. Panel 2 here, they're all getting ready to land. And Hard is making everybody uncomfortable because he's squeezed in alongside everybody and just like sweating. The panel itself is okay. The smaller figures in the back there don't look particularly great. But I mean, they're smaller figures. It's fine. You're probably not even going to look at them too closely. Although if you do look closely, you'll also see Popo in the back just glowering, which is fun. I liked Hawkstab here because it looks like he's flicking toggles or something, which would make sense for a guy in like the co-pilot seat, except that he's got like 2-foot-long blades on his arms, which would be like embedded in the roof. But I was okay with that. I was aware. I figured I'm just going to keep putting Hawkstab's hands just off panel in a place where they couldn't possibly be. And that will be funny to me. And I was right. I feel like I'm starting to get the hang of Hawkstab's hair a little bit here. Why is your hair waving when you're inside of a jet? That doesn't make any sense. And then panel 3, they're just getting ready to set down. Again, a case of basically his hand is like right by the window that those blades should be going through the glass. That's okay. And the only problem here is that Hawkstab's head is fucking gigantic. Bothers me. But I'm not enough to do anything to change it. Don't mind the shadows, like the underlighting on this page. That's all fun stuff. There's a bit of fun rendering going on here and there. And trying to get like a streaky effect a little bit with some fast hatching on the background as they're like zooming past. Kind of works. Would have worked better if the thing was going to be in color. But that's how it goes. Okay, page 16. We get our... I mean, this is basically our first real team shot, so we're going to have everybody not posing, but at least, just presenting themselves. So that, which is why you get Fireburn off in the background, kind of, flying off, although he is also flying off to do a reconnoiter. Popo has an insanely large gun, which I like, and I'm only showing the barest minimum of the Bloodbird vessel off to the side here, just enough to just kind of suggest that it's there, which is correct. That's what you do. The figures here, not particularly great, like Hard, Shock Block's okay, I guess. But Hawkstab looks solid, which is the most important thing. Again, his head is a little bit too big, though. Panel 2, we've got Hawkstab telling Maxtremis to stay close, and that, she's got to keep herself out of danger. And Maxtremis is like, I don't even understand why I'm here. Like, legit, that's a line. I like this shot of them. Maxtremis has too much chin, which is a problem that I'm still working on, really. But overall, it looks all right. It looks like they're vacation snaps. Again, could go harder with the shadow, but that's something I'm going to have to pick up. So the team is going to spread out. They're going to try and find the Spasm science camp, because these are the coordinates where they should be as far as they know. And so they're just going to have to do some scanning. Whatever that thing that Shock Block is holding, I guess that's the scanner. I'm not sure exactly why I landed on that design. It looked a little bit like one of the old handheld games to me, but I'm talking like, mid-80s handheld games. And then at the bottom, we get Popo saying, I think I've found them. So we go to the next page. It's like, yeah, I think you might have, Popo. Good job. So they stumble upon the Spasm camp, and it's been kind of torn to pieces. Blasted apart. And Popo does a little bit of investigation, finds that all the victims, the science guys, have burn marks on them. And as soon as somebody says burns, Fireburn gets excited. He wants to get involved. And he immediately identifies that these are burns off of some sort of plasma weapon. And I get maybe my favorite line in this book. He says the affected area would have been boiled immediately. And Hard, who is now getting into his dick pun mode, it just goes, burning sensation. And Fireburn goes, hey, pal, I'm the only burning sensation around these parts, which I like quite a bit. I thought that was all right. And Hawkstab slowly pieces together that this would have been the work of the Clerg, because they're sent out here to investigate the Clerg. Like, Maxtremis and General Rancor put it together back in the fucking auditorium. The Bloodatorium. That was what it was called. And this page here was a gigantic pain in the ass. This took me forever to finish, I think. The top panel, I think I had to redraw a couple of times because the perspective kept getting fucked up. And then I drew too much grass texture around, and then I had to white out half of it. In the end, I'd say it's pretty good, although there's aspects that look kind of weak. Like just, some of the faces, that kind of thing. Panel 2 with Popo, he ended up looking kind of fat, but I was able to cover up a lot of him with the word balloon there, thankfully. Fireburn doesn't look too great. That's going to happen. Panel 3 there, with the science guy who's been killed and just kind of left on the ground. I remember the head was originally too big for the body, and then I redrew it so that there was a bit better proportion, and now it actually looks quite good. Gave him the Liefeld wide open mouth and everything. And he has kind of a variation on the General Rancor outfit because they're basically part of the same organization. But yeah, that panel turned out okay. And the bottom panel here, I liked how Hawkstab was looking. You can see that hair starting to get a little lively. Expression's good. The other guys here, they're okay. Hard's having to lean way over to kind of get Fireburn in his sights. And then, Maxtremus and Popo here got kind of cartoony, really. Maxtremus' hair is getting bigger as we're going, I'm noticing. Shockblock doesn't really look very good, but that's okay because the next page is the big 2-page spread where Blood Force get jumped by the Clerg. And it's just going to degenerate into like a 5 or 6 page fight scene because I thought that was excessive at the time. I've since changed my mind, but, hey, baby steps. So this was a big deal for me. This was my first attempt at doing a double page spread, and I was pretty happy with how it turned out at the time. These days it's like, yeah, it's pretty good. I don't think I'd really change it. Nah, it's fine. Hawkstab here looks pretty good. That's a nice dynamic pose. That took a while to figure out how to draw the head at that angle. Just trying iteration after iteration of trying to do that particular angle. Popo looks great. He did have his giant gun in just the page previous, and now he's all of a sudden thrown that away so that he can have 2 pistols, but the 2 pistols looks better. If he was swinging the giant gun in front of him, that would have been blocking him out, so that's no good. Hard doesn't look great. I could have done that way better. I don't know, I just kind of brain locked on him, I think. I would try to do a better job on that these days. I like Fireburn swooping in to wipe out a bunch of the Clerg behind this first line here. And Shockblock doesn't look too bad, although, man, that ass is tight. Got pretty scribbly on the hatching on Shockblock, too. That'll happen every once in a while, where all of a sudden I start feeling like I'm good. And it's like, all right, I can just lay lines down, and they'll work for me. It's like, well, no, you gotta work a little bit harder than that. And that arm is, I don't know, it's a bit of a mess. It's a bit of a Quasimodo arm. Like, it's just out of proportion with the rest of them. But, that's fine. Overall, as a 2-page panel, it's pretty good, I'd say. The impact is a little bit reduced, I feel like, by having the Clerg be kind of tiny and having Blood Force be very big, basically. But overall, yeah, I don't really think I'd redo this, if I were of a mind to redo panels. There's no real point going over the dialogue at this point. They're just kind of like trying to figure out strategy on the fly. Hawkstab takes a swipe at one of the Clerg, cuts him open. Looks pretty good. Those back muscles are looking a little squishy, but that's okay. Also, I don't know how the back and the front muscles meet at this point. I don't know that I know that yet. I would have to try to draw them to know for sure. Also, head's too big. Oh well. And very little splatter. I was looking through my notes like, man, I like how that splatter looks. Man, there's barely any splatter there. And then we've got our shot of Shockblock getting overwhelmed by the Clerg, which I still like quite a bit. I still go back to this shot to try and remind myself of what the Clerg should look like, because I tend to kind of lose focus a little bit. And then I get back to this one, it's like, oh yeah, no, they do look a little bit intimidating. That's not bad at all. And like put that on an extreme Dutch with some speed lines, get some, you get like the impression of more Clerg behind Shockblock and the one he's battling here. Like it's just a wave of them coming forth. But there's really not a whole lot actually being shown here. Like you get a silhouette up at the top, and then another one kind of peeking between the two bodies here, and then, the one in the bottom left of the panel. But it's actually not all that much. All the drawing that was being done on this is mostly rendering on Shockblock, which is as it should be. A little bit funky shading, because I was trying to get a bit more black in him here, I think, and I just kind of threw it on randomly and didn't realize that didn't really work. until after I was done. But yeah, not bad. It's a good first attempt at a double page spread, even if it is the second attempt. And then Hard is ordered to make a hole. So we get the shot of the Clerg just blasting away at Blood Force, and one of them looks over and notices, and then, yeah, Hard swoops in, just goes knocking all the Clerg flying, and yells, "This shit gets me hard." And that was the first line I thought of when writing this thing. This page like kind of came to me preformed, and then I finally got to draw it, and it turned out pretty much like I was hoping it would look. It's kind of rough looking. You know, if I were inking this now, I'd probably be doing it a lot smoother. I think I was using a pretty thick brush pen, actually, on the outline on Hard. But, you know, maybe that doesn't, maybe that gives it a little bit of energy. I don't know. And going for that ultra detailed close-up of his face here with way too many teeth. I think I could probably fit in more detail now. But it's still, I got an effect pretty close to what I was looking for. But again, a little too rough with the Pigma pen. It's a pretty smooth look, because, you know, Rob Liefeld usually get Dandy Miki or something. So I might have, if I was going for more of the parody kind of feel, I might have tried to go for more smoother inking, but I don't think that was something I really had in mind at that time. Page 21, and the tables are starting to turn. Hawkstab is, you know, he's stabbing another one. I think that one turns out okay. I noticed that the Clerg that Hawkstab has to deal with are considerably skinnier than the ones that Shockblock has to deal with. Maybe because they're backlit. Kind of going for a Jim Lee blood treatment on the blades, which doesn't look too bad, I think. Also, again, very little bit of spritzing going on. I can spritz way more than that now. Panel 2, I think I was starting to get the hang of it now with Shockblock. Gave him another Dutch angle. Wasn't sure exactly what I needed for him to do to the Clerg. I just knew he needed to get an attack in. So I decided on like a big old electro punch. So yeah, that kind of like straight downward shot with the Dutch angle, with the lasers flying past him. I thought that looked pretty good. Still think not too bad, although again, very rough. I would shadow it quite a bit more these days. But the actual layout of the panel, yeah, I don't really have any problem with that. And then we get our close-up of Popo just shooting wildly. I was trying a thing here where I was trying to do the gun vibrating in his hand because he just kept holding down the trigger. And, you know, you see all the muzzle flares going on there. All the casings flying out the back. I don't really think it works. I think I was aware at the time that it doesn't 100% work. Or at least, you know, once I started scribbling. But I figured, okay, well, shit. I mean, Popo's face here, I love how that looks. I don't really want to redraw it, and I don't want to stick something over it, I don't think. So I think I'll just leave it and just kind of not do that again, and I haven't. Yeah, I liked how Popo's face turned out, even if it's, again, a little bit big. I've said, I have big head syndrome when it comes to drawing people. And at that point, the Clerg are starting to flame out, as Fireburn tells us. Hard has dick puns, Fireburn has fire puns. This is why these characters don't get as much time as some of the other characters, I think. And also, they don't really have personalities. That's what they have. Instead of the personalities, they have puns. So they're going to try to make a final push to see if they can make them break. Only before they can do that, Popo gets overrun. He gets just swarmed by Clerg here in like a zombie panel. But then there's a big flash of light, and a bunch of the Clerg are just kind of knocked aside. So yeah, and that's Lady Maxtremis. So these panels here, I mean, this page here was pretty good, actually, I think. I like the shot of Fireburn to lead off with. I like the shot of Popo turning. I even like his gun. That was a decent job of trying to do some techie looking stuff. The shot of him getting swarmed by the Clerg was kind of difficult, and if I recall correctly, his right hand is at an angle that it couldn't possibly be at. But I was able to cover it up enough that you wouldn't be able to tell. And it's off in the corner, like you're not looking there anyway. And I kind of like the way the Clerg look here, actually. This is like almost like a creepy looking panel. And a fair amount of black going on, like a lot of ink. And like really using like a thick outline to pop out Popo's left arm there and like his chest and try and separate him from the Clerg. Which I think worked pretty well. And then the bottom panel here, yeah, this is Maxtremis doing some kind of power blast kind of thing. Which I didn't mind how it looked, really. You do get the impression it's not exactly obliterating the Clerg. It's more just kind of like shaking the dust off, but like it's still like just like a shock wave that kind of rips through. Not a bad look. I think I was intending originally for it to do more damage, but I like it a little bit more as like a low yield AoE attack. And then maybe, if necessary, she can focus it into more of a high power beam. So with that, the Clerg are pretty much driven off. Hawkstab's a little surprised that the girl was that effective. I think that was what that basically boiled down to. I don't think it's really specifically said here, but I think that was kind of what I was thinking. And I had the idea that every once in a while she would, kind of come in as a Deus Ex Machina, save the day thing. And every time he would be surprised that she would be effective. And then at the end here, we get kind of an out of nowhere flirtation between the two of them, which is kind of inappropriate, particularly with Fireburn burning the Clerg alive behind them. The page itself, not great. The shot of Max Dream is here. It's like, it's okay. It's a bit of an awkward attempt at this pose. Like, I know what I'm going for here, but it's, not as good as I would hope. Hawkstab looks okay in the top right. It's looking very scratchy. I think part of that is on purpose with the smoke effect in the background. That is what that is. But this whole thing just looks very rough at this point. And I think it's become a bit more polished since. Or at least I'm more direct about, like, the roughness is more purposeful when it does show up. And like little stick figure Clergs getting like just thrown around by all the fire that Fireburn's throwing out there. And then we get our last page, page 24, as Blood Force goes to leave. They all get loaded up in the Bloodbird. They've secured the data cache from the science team's site, so they'll be able to figure out exactly what happened and maybe leech off any kind of information that the Spasm guys had picked up about the initial meteor crash. And I keep having to refer back to that because that seems like some kind of MacGuffin. I'm still not 100% sure on what exactly is on the Spasm data cache, although I'm starting to get some ideas. So they all load up into the plane. The plane takes off again. As they're going, they say, anyone see what happened to Popo? And I made a point of having Hard say, I did not. Just to have him not have a pun sentence in there to remind people that Hard could talk like a regular person if he wanted to. He just doesn't. But Blood Force assumes that Popo has basically slunk away and he's gone to find a roof somewhere to perch on. Even though, if they looked a little closer, they would have seen that his guns were left behind, along with a whole bunch of bullet casings. So, and as the little reminder thing at the bottom says, next issue, Popo's fate revealed. So just to kind of drive home the fact that Popo was stolen by the Clerg. How could that possibly be ending? Well, as of this video, I mean, I'm still writing issue 5. He's still on the Clerg ship. That has been a fucking slow boil. It's a fun one, though. And the page itself, not too bad. Mostly it comes down to this shot of the Bloodbird taking off, which I think looks pretty good. The other panels, not so much. I had a fair amount of difficulty with the bottom panel here, the shot of the guns. The perspective was kind of tough to figure out, and that gun on the left looks a little bit bendy. And again, too scratchy with the smoke, too scratchy with the details on the guns. A little bit scratchy even on the terrain. The shot of them in the Bloodbird getting ready to load up. I'm getting a little bit, I think, punchy at this point. So, like, Hawkstab's face is getting kind of cartoony. So is Hard, really. Fireburn looks a little bit simplistic. Overall, it works, I think, and it actually kind of looks like it works in 3D space. But these days, I would put in a fair bit more detail and, again, more slick. Try to render the guys a fair bit more, maybe even throw in a bit more black. Although there is a fair amount of black in that panel. So with that, we've had our first encounter with the Clerg. We've seen our team in action. Popo was kidnapped and taken away. And the Blood Force team acquired the Spasm data cache, which they're still working to unlock. So not an inordinate amount of things to put in a first issue. Except if you're trying to do an Image issue, in which case it's like, whoa, back off with the plot, buddy. Because the issue moves, I think, pretty well. It is trying to accomplish different things than I would be accomplishing later on. I'll say that. Because at this point, I'm focusing very much on the Image parody aspects. And that just isn't so much of a focus anymore. It's just about drawing cool shit and having funny things happen. Every once in a while, I still go, if I'm stuck for an idea, maybe I'll go, okay, what would a Liefeld thing do here? Or, what would Platt do? That's usually a good idea. But at this point, that was the point of the book. And it was very heavy-handed with the parody. Like at the beginning when Maxtremus and Rancor are wandering through the halls, they're all like, these are some great fake technology halls that we're wandering through. And there's a bit of that getting thrown around. It was, it seemed funny at the time, and then now it just kind of seems forced. But, it kind of, like I said, baby steps. It took a while for Blood Force to really become what it is. But yeah, anyway, that, I guess, is Blood Force number 1. It's not bad, really, I think. The art gets kind of rough. But not too long after this, I would start figuring out how to use Tombow brush pens, and that would make things a fair bit slicker, although I did for a little while have a bit of an over-reliance on them. So yeah, the art, like I said, a little bit rough. The dialogue, pretty good. Like, the characters haven't changed, really, since issue 1, which is nice, because it was like 2 whole fucking years ago. What it's trying to accomplish has changed, but yeah, at least there's that grounding thing where there's no sudden shift in any personalities or anything like that. And I think the plot moves okay. It gets a little bit hung up here and there with some discussion. Mostly, I'm thinking mostly of the discussion between Hawkstab and Shockblock, but I can't quite let go of needing an A leads to B leads to C. You can't just cut from Hawkstab being chewed out by Rancor for not having Popo to Popo sitting on a ledge and Shockblock appearing behind him. I mean, you could, and you just have him say, yeah, no, Hawkstab sent me. But I'd rather have the kind of slow breakdown and just kind of passing the information along. Yeah, it really wasn't necessary at all. I could have just done that. Oh, like I said, there's a lot of things I'm still picking up. But hey, I mean, looking back on it, it's not as bad as I fear it is. I haven't looked at this very much in the past year or so. And when you leave this kind of thing alone, I have a tendency to remember it as being like, oh my God, none of this looks any good. It's like, you know what? Actually, there are some parts that look pretty good. I can outdraw all of them now, of course, but after 2.5 years, it's like, well, yeah, you fucking better be able to. So anyway, that is Blood Force number 1. I hope you enjoyed that. Next plan is to actually finish everything up and get it ready in a PDF format to get that online, along with issue 2, issue 3, issue 4. Why not, right? They're all completed. And get that goddamn issue 5 script done. Oh my God. All while trying to get out 3 review videos a week and 2 live streams. Anyway, that's going to do it for this one. Thanks very much for watching. And thanks very much for subscribing. If you like this video, please hit like. If you haven't subscribed, please hit subscribe. Hit the notifications so you know when the next one's coming out. Go over and subscribe to my Patreon. Links are in the description, gives you early access to everything I do, from the Blood Force stuff to the YouTube videos before they get uploaded to YouTube, as well as some Patreon exclusive content. You can also follow me on Instagram and DM me there for commissions, and you can join the Blood Force Discord server. So yeah, that's going to do it. Maybe I'll do another one of these for issue 2 when we hit 3,000. So I imagine around this time next year. It seems to be an annual thing. But for this one, that's going to do it. Thanks again for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.